All right, folks. Hello and welcome back to online English class. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today we are going to be finishing up our final OTN, both for the novel and for the year. Okay, so this is our last analysis of the year. We got summer coming right around the corner, which means that you have two final tasks that you ought to give your absolute best effort on, so that you can enter into your extended break having earned that break by expressing your absolute best efforts on these final two assignments. Okay, so before we get into completing that last OTN, let's talk through our top of the week announcements. First and foremost, you need to make sure that you are taking care of your discussion grade duties. Second, you need to make sure that you send an email confirming your completion of OTN 6, 7, and 8 by today at 3 p.m. Third, you need to make sure that you complete your OTNs as we complete them in class. We are going to be talking about OTN 9 today, so you need to complete that. Fourth, you need to download the Unit 6 review guide. And on that Unit 6 review guide are some details about the test that I will allow you to read. And you can make the choice, because you are free to not read these, all right, and reap the consequences of not understanding what you're going to be asked to do. The prompt, which I will leave you the freedom to read or not read, right, and reap the consequences if you do not do that, and the writing expectations, which you should work through and think through and read carefully and make sure you understand on a very intimate level, or of course you cannot do that and reap the consequences of that, because you are a free, rational human being. All right, so. I am simply here to say it would be wise and helpful for you, if you would like to succeed on this test, to spend some time with this. All right, the rest is up to you. Okay, so ultimately, these writing expectations are reflections of the writing skills that we've been developing in the 9th grade and 10th grade English classes as a whole. They are skills that are related to the Florida State standards, the College Board standards, and basically universal standards for what it means to write well, write reasonably, to be a college-ready writer. Okay, so if you want to be a college-ready writer, you want to be on that line that we talked about in quarter 3, then you should spend some time with this. Okay, if you have no interest in spending time working diligently on this, then you can absolutely reap the consequences. Okay, so you are free. All right, another kind of assignment that you need to spend some time with is your quarter 4 essay. Okay, once again, you can choose to work through your quarter 4 essay diligently, or you can choose to ignore it. All right, and reap the consequences accordingly. The news is that it is due May 22nd at the latest. All right, so without any further ado, let's go ahead and get back into OTN 9, which analyzes Part 3, Chapter 6. Okay, so Chapter 6 begins on page 287 of the novel. This is the resolution of the novel's plot. It resolves Winston's character development and illustrates the nature of the dystopian environment in which Winston lives. Okay, so we're going to analyze a series of passages and discuss the ways in which they bring Winston's character arc to a conclusion, and they conclude Orwell's depiction of the worst possible world, the world that shatters and breaks the human spirit, okay, instead of redeems it or upholds it and honors it. Okay, so if we turn to Chapter 6, which is on page 287, we can begin our analysis. Now, our analysis needs to begin with important meditation on the context of this scene. Okay, so the end of Winston's character arc, the end of Winston's destruction, all right, concludes with him outside of the ministry of love. They don't hold him there forever. In fact, they set him free again. Okay, now obviously he's still an OCN and it's not a free society, but he does not have the direct control of O'Brien, the direct torture of the party that is around every corner of every choice and every thought that Winston has. Rather, the party, in order to illustrate the extent to which the totalitarian control they have over him, they have to what? They have to set him back free so that he can do what? Enlist his own choices in the destruction of his own freedom. Okay, so in order to understand the scene, we need to meditate, as usual with this novel, on a certain concept before we can understand the text. All right, the concept we need to think about at the end of this novel and in this final scene is what it means on the most basic level to be free. What does it mean to be free? What is human freedom? Okay, well, first, human freedom is different, than any other kind of living creature's experiences. Okay, a human is free in a way that no other animal or no other plant or no other entity is free. Why? Well, because a dog or a cat or a cow or a creature with a central nervous system that does seem to make choices, right? That they can sniff in the yard over there, or they can sniff in the yard over there, and they can choose to bark, they can choose to sleep, they can choose to nap, all right? But a dog, in the end, is bound, all right, to always follow the instinctual impulses that are associated with its dogness and that are imposed on it by or catalyzed by its environment. Okay, so in that sense, a dog is not free to meditate on, okay, what kind of dog it wants to be. All right, very unlike you. You are capable of saying, what kind of person am I? What kind of person do I want to be? And then making choices that align with those reflections. Okay, the dog, on the other hand, cannot reflect on those concepts. There is a highway that all dogs live on, and there are different lanes in that highway, right? There are different lanes that the dog can occupy, but there are no exits from dogness. Okay, unlike that, right? A human, while they cannot simply change their own physical nature, right? You can't choose to inhabit a different body with your spirit. You are indeed a creature, but you're a unique kind of creature that can change the orientation of your highway. You can say, my ultimate goal in life is to get money, and then make a series of choices, all right, that reflect that ultimate goal. And that goal is not necessarily forced on you. You could equally say, well, my ultimate goal is to glorify God and to enjoy Him forever and to build up the church. Okay, and then you can make a series of choices that reflect that ultimate goal. Okay, so in that sense, you are free. All right, you are uniquely free. All right, now your choices are made, right, according to two different important things. All right, number one, your apprehension of reality. Okay, your basic rational understanding of simple concepts like, if I jump off this cliff, I will die. 2 plus 2 equals 4. Cutting my hand off with a knife will hurt, so I'm going to not do that, right? You make choices according to your basic apprehensions of reality, and you also make choices according to your trans-rational commitments to the things that you love or believe in or have faith in or put your hope in, all right? Or the things that you hate, okay? The things that you deem evil, as you make choices to try and expand on the good and to diminish the evil. All right, and in that way, you are free to make choices, and the way that you make choices are intimately related to what? Your mind and your heart. Okay, and that unique freedom is part of what is at the very, very core of the human creature. You are capable of choosing. Now, the fact that you are free, listen carefully, should lead to some rational political and social implications. Okay? The fact that you are a free person and that is in your essence, and that by the mere fact that you are capable of making choices that are different than an animal, that you ought to be treated, in order to be treated according to your essence, you ought to be treated differently than an animal. All right, your freedom ought to be respected. It ought to be defended. So the political implication is, if that is true, it should be true externally in the way that we treat each other socially. All right, doesn't necessarily mean that we all have to make the same choices or believe the same stuff. In fact, making someone believe something is both impossible and also immoral, right? You can't make a person believe something. It offends against their essence, right? Rather, you ought to politically, horizontally, when it comes to man's relationship with man, create systems, institutions, societies that help people be free, that help people pursue their understanding, their knowledge, their beliefs about the good. Okay, right? Does that make sense? So if I believe that my job is to honor God, glorify God, that I've been saved by grace apart from works, and I believe that to be true, I ought to be free in my external world to preach that gospel, to teach at a school that extols that gospel, right? To read books in light of that gospel. I ought to be free to do that, okay? I ought to be free to do that. There's clear, logical, political, social implications that come from acknowledging that this is part of what the essence of a human being is. Now listen, if those logical implications are allowed to be meditated on consciously by the citizens of Oceania, then it threatens what? The party's ultimate goal, power, and the sustain or the sustenance of that power, right? The sustaining of that power. So the party must, in order to fully conquer a human creature, allow them to exercise their choice, but only can allow them to exercise choice insofar as they enlist choice or use their choices to destroy their own ability to choose. In this sense, the party is going to finally, in this final chapter, illustrate its ability to enlist Winston's freedom in the destruction of Winston's freedom. Okay, so how does that occur? Well, it first becomes evident in the way that the party controls one of the core aspects of Winston's ability to choose, right? His mind, okay, his rational mind. Now, when we talk about the rational mind, we talk about the portion of yourself, as we've already discussed, that is capable of observing the world using your senses in order to come to valid conclusions that reflect the truth of your observations. Okay, so the ability to think a thought like it would be stupid for me to jump off this cliff because of gravity, I would fall down it and then I would die. Right? I'm not going to slice off my hand with this knife, because this knife is very sharp and that would incur a great deal of pain for me, okay? That would be a bad idea, right? That rational mind that helps keep you tethered to reality, all right? That ability to understand the truth, okay? Well, Winston's ability to make decisions, free decisions, in light of rational understandings of reality has been destroyed and remade in the image of the party. Okay, so this is evident for us in the way that he approaches the chess problem. All right, that he has in front of him in the Chestnut Cafe. Now, significantly, the game of chess is a game of choice. All right, it requires an individual to make deliberate choices in light of an ultimate goal. All right, now an animal who is not rational in the same way as a human being, or not really rational technically even, could not play chess the way that a human being could play chess. Yes, they could move the pieces, right? A monkey could sit around and grab it with its hand and move it to the next space, and you go, oh, look, the monkey's playing chess, right? But the monkey could not understand or apprehend the rules or the goal of the game of chess, and so therefore could not be said to play the game of chess any more than you could be said to be playing the game of chess if you just sat down and started moving the pieces all over the board and said, look at me, I'm playing chess. Well, no, you're not, okay? You don't understand the rules of the game of chess, and so you're not really playing it, right? So this game requires human reason to engage in, all right? So Winston is allowed to express his human reason, right? He is being human here. But, all right, as he is exploring his own human rationality in even a small way, he does so unconscious, of the implications of that rationality, which should lead him to reasonable rebellion against the party, as we saw in parts 1 and 2, and B, leads him to irrational conclusions about the eternal omnipotence of the party, okay? So, for example, right, white to play and mate in 2 moves. Okay, so in other words, there's a chessboard that's set up, and white, it's white's turn, and white needs to mate in 2 moves. Okay, so Winston looks up at the portrait of Big Brother. White always mates, he thought, with a sort of cloudy mysticism. So that's not true, right? In the game of chess, white doesn't always mate. Sometimes black wins, sometimes white wins. It doesn't have a metaphorical or symbolic meaning, right? It's a game between 2 individuals who are attempting to win. All right, white doesn't always mate. But Winston forgets or ignores this clear evidence that this thought is irrational. And it leads him to come to the conclusion that, like white always mating, the party, a symbol of good, the pure, the right, the righteous, always victors over evil. Okay, and the huge face gazed back of him, full of calm power. White always mates, he thinks. Okay, so in other words, Winston's rational mind that is deployed, used in the solving of the chess problem leads him, all right, to irrational kinds of reflections on the eternal omnipotent power and goodness of the party. Winston has every reason in his own experiences, in his own life, to know that this is not true. Okay, that the party is not good, all right, and the party is not omnipotent. You can rebel, right? But ignoring all of that evidence with a retrained mind that is still capable of reason, but only reasoning insofar as the thoughts that he arrives at, the conclusions that he arrives at, deepens, okay, and develops his enslavement. All right, Winston comes to this deeply irrational conclusion, right, while he is thinking rationally, right? This is evident for us in our own, in the ways that we, as human creatures, in the real world, enlist our reason in the destruction of reason. Okay, we think something like, all right, a president that I support. I support this president, okay, whether he's a Democrat or Republican, whether it's Obama or Trump or Bush or whatever. This president that I support him because he's good, okay? And so when that president seems to lie or abuse power, I'm going to forget the evidence that this man is fallible and that I ought to critically evaluate his leadership and hold him accountable for his mistakes, because after all, he's just a human creature. Okay, but instead I'm going to forget all of the evidence that this man is fallible and might not always need to be trusted, and that I shouldn't always unequivocally believe everything that this individual says. I'm going to forget all of that evidence, and I'm going to explain his lies as simple misunderstandings. Oh, we just misunderstood what he meant to say here. And all of his abuses of power as tough choices, right, of gritty decisions on for our benefit, right? Well, that's a way of using your reason to analyze evidence, but operating from false premises, the fact that this man is perfect. No, it's clear. No man is perfect. No leader is perfect, and no leader, especially an American leader in democracy, ought to be held above any kind of scrutiny. Okay, so if there is some kind of charge that there's been wrongdoing, it ought to be thought about. And entertaining the idea that there has been wrongdoing is not disloyalty to that individual. It isn't disloyalty to America. It's rather just rational thinking. If the charges don't come up to be true, then drop them and move away. If they come up to be true, then prosecute, because the man is fallible. The man is just a man. But far too often, we enlist our reason in the destruction of our ability to be rational because we operate from false or enslaving premises that narrow our range of thought, that require us to forget and ignore certain evidences that what we previously thought might not be true. We are capable of being wrong. One must never forget that, right? Lest one sacrifice ironically, the freedom of their own mind, right? They become enslaved to that premise. It's very similar to the way that the Nazi youth program worked in Nazi Germany. A party, very much like the party, which trained young people, all right, to believe that Jews, right, the Juden, das Juden, right, was always evil. Okay, utterly evil. And so therefore it's rational to do what? What do you do with utter evil? Okay, well, if you're a rational person, you destroy it, right? So if the Jew is utterly evil, all right, then they ought to be marched off to concentration camps and incinerated, right? You got to take the garbage out, okay? But you see, imagine for me, if you will, a young boy who's in the Nazi youth, who's been trained to love the Fuhrer and believe everything that the Nazi party says is true, okay? And at risk of the torture of social ostracization if he questions any of those premises. Listen carefully. And then he meets this charming, beautiful Jewish girl who is in every way sweet, kind, intelligent, human. That individual must ignore that evidence that Jewish girl is a human being, and that she indeed ought not be taken to Auschwitz, that she is more than trash. That individual must enlist his own mind in the destruction of rational thinking. And guess what, people? We as human creatures do that all the time. All right? It's an expression of the ways in which we enslave ourselves to false premises. Okay? It's evident in the way that, say, an atheistic evolutionist materialist approaches the world. Okay? In every corner of the world, there's evidence that this world is improbably, carefully designed. Right? Every molecule, every rotation of the earth, it's all like literally perfect to make human life possible. And yet, ignoring all of the evidence of their senses, all of the evidence that there is indeed a good reason to believe that there is a designer, ignoring that evidence, right? What does the modern atheist say? Oh, you silly theist, believe that there's some designer up in the clouds, some big man with a beard who made the world. So silly of you! Wow, must be fun to live in a fantasy land. Okay, when the whole world, all right, when looked at objectively, seems to have been designed, and that it is rational to say there might be a designer. All right. And then obviously you can open up the floor. Well, who did the designing? I wonder who. Well, now you've got to exercise some faith and say, well, I think it's the God of the Bible, incarnated in Christ. Okay, but simply saying that there's probably a designer, probably a first cause, is an deeply rational kind of thing to think. And ignoring that is a way of enlisting reason, right? The ability to analyze and create understandings and generalities that reflect the truth. Denying that and even mocking a person who is a theist, who searches for a designer, is a way of enlisting one's reason in the destruction of free thinking, of forgetting that one has forgot the clear evidence, the self-evident evidence of their senses. It's ultimately the way that sin works on the mind. It's an expression of the way in which the sinner's mind enlists itself. Me, I am the sinner, okay? The way that my flesh enlists my mind, all right, in its own destruction, okay? Making myself my own ultimate, forgetting the God that I have claimed to love, and pursuing my own power, my own pleasure as ultimates when I know that I am not, right? It's an example, it's a testimony to the capacity of the human being to have its nature, its essence, turned against itself. Okay, the final expression of this comes as Winston says in the last line of the whole novel. He reflects on an internal truth that he loves Big Brother. The other key element of his heart, of his freedom, is his trans-rational heart. Okay? A person is not just free because they can think. A person is free because they can love and hate and feel and direct their affections toward that which they want to direct their affections. They can say, I love God, so I will live as if I do. They can say, I love money, and so they can live and they can make choices in light of that love. They could say, I love this child, and then make choices and live a life that align with that choice. Okay, it's an expression of human freedom. Okay, it's a portion of human freedom. It's a source, all right, of the kind of choices that we're able to make. So the party has to destroy this form of deliberate choice, but, all right, they have to also recreate it. They have to warp it so that Winston, by the end of the novel, is left loving only one thing, Big Brother, instead of loving in a way that builds him and others up, as love is indeed designed to do. Love is supposed to be something that is mutually life-giving. That's why God says to love others as you love yourself. Okay, it's a mutual system of flourishing. Okay, Winston is left only being able to love self-destructively. Okay, and he significantly cannot consciously think about his capacity to love, which makes him free. He has to do it unconsciously, forgetting that Big Brother is the most loathsome entity in his life, that Big Brother is not even real, a representative of a party that has tortured him, dehumanized him, and destroyed him. Okay? But he wins the victory over himself. He destroys himself deliberately, engaging in the process of his own dehumanization and destruction, and then affirms a kind of internal truth that expresses a trans-rational love of Big Brother that is going to orient and organize the rest of his actions for his life, right? So above everything is his love of Big Brother. And that love means that he has to hate everything else, including, guess who? Himself, right? He's got to hate himself. He's got to hate Julia, right, in order to preserve his life and to love himself. In other words, his love of himself is hate. His love of Big Brother is hate. His love of Julia is hate. Everything is its opposite, even as man is also not man anymore. So ends 1984, a testimony of the extent to which evil turns man against man's self. All right, hope you enjoyed the novel. The call that I would give to you is to consider carefully what it means to be a human being, what it means to be free, what it means to have the capacity to choose, and to think carefully about how you make those choices, right? What do you believe to be true? What have you set your affections on most highly? And ultimately, remember that evil has a sneaky way of warping your spirit against itself, of warping your will against what you were made to be, what you were made to do. Be careful, be thoughtful, be conscious, watch, pray, think carefully about your own existence, your own heart, your own mind. Have a great day.